So this is a Feng
Mystic
Shui
Taxi.
reading for 162 Princess Street. This is Rielly Stares from my company, Mystic Taxi. I'm a Feng Shui practitioner and decorator in Kingston. And this little property happens to be one of my favorite buildings in Kingston. I lived here my whole life, practically, and I remember limestone music, of course, that inhabited this building for the longest time. And I have such a soft spot for this building, so I really wanted to look into it and see what kind of feng shui is going on in it and sort of draw it out and make a little video. This building, as I said, has been one of my favorites in Kingston since I was a little girl, and it would be so nice to see it inhabited and loved and used again. The interior staircase on the right that is visible through the window that leads up to the second floor. I remember noticing that for the first time, and the beautiful wooden railing that runs along the staircase and how much curiosity it creates about the relationship between the second floor and the first floor. Staircases seen from the outside of buildings always create drama and interest. This was a really good device, a really good design element. The other great element that I really love is the interesting front windows and the general aesthetic of the windows, which is very 1970s and is extremely unusual for Kingston. And also the fact that the window at the top is trimmed with a wooden panel, and that around the corner to the right is a window that's very close to the corner of the building, and it exposes the staircase, and it also has this wooden paneling on it. So extremely unusual, delicate features. The seller's plan in this case is very nice and exciting. They've drawn up a plan for adding a third story to the building and creating a lot of living spaces on the upper floors and parking spots and everything. So it looks like a lot of exciting potential. This is the overall feng shui plan that shows the different important things that are happening. You can see that there is a forest on the outside and a forest on the inside of the building. Sometimes when you find the center of a property and the center of a building, they're identical, and there you can see that there's a cohesion. There are two separate forces, one coming in from the outside. The parking lot in particular is a very powerful place. And then this energy from the inside. This space, the mountain space, is timeless, and it's dry, and it's moved by beauty, and it's reflective, and it's long thinking, and it's considerate, and I'm feeling that the person who's going to connect the most with this building is likely to be a person making an emotional decision to buy the building based on a feeling and a vision, but not necessarily on a rational plan. Although I can see this person taking inspiration from the plan feature that the realtors have, I can see that there is a heart-centered force here that's carrying a person into this venture, and I can see the pressure that's coming in from the central point outside that makes it seem like this buyer is going to want to get this property in motion fairly quickly after moving in so that it can start creating income. I feel like the most willing buyer is probably going to be someone who would like this space to be a conduit for experiences, and so they're likely to want a building that is aesthetically beautiful, probably would like to be guided into the beauty of this space, the unusual aesthetic features of the building. What are the smartest priorities? I feel like anyone dealing with this space would have pressures coming in from the outside. I don't think that there's an idea of perfection here. I think it's more about, I think things are going to evolve over time, and that things are going to have to be moving fairly fast, and it's just a matter of getting a sketch of the feeling and atmosphere in here as far as the seller is concerned to create the idea of the possibilities visually. There are lots of different ways that this can be done. I'm showing that there's a fiery feeling from the outside. There's a lot of energy coming in that's very exciting. There's a possibility of making a lot of beauty from the side of the building, and the view to the outside from the inside is going to be really important. The sight lines are really important. Energy is coming in from outside. What you want is for that energy to be demand and customers and business coming in. And so I'm going to be talking about how to maximize that in a minute. Someone who is going to be attracted to this space is going to be someone who can respond with sensitivity to demands, someone who can the courtesy to deal with the neighbors and to create a space that's a common area that's conducive to the well-being of everybody involved. The neighbors being happy is going to be a good way to create good word of mouth in the community and the space immediately around you. Naturally has a lot of fire energy because of all of the power coming in from the south of this spot and culminating on the outside. All of these people who are around are going to carry that your business is here. They're going to talk about it, and what you want is for them to be talking about it in the correct way and for the relationship between you and them to be harmonious, because in a lot of ways they are the power and force behind the business, and they have the power to create good business. It takes an easygoing, cool-headed, reflective, considerate person to create a success out of all three stages of this. So I'm looking at these things from the seller's point of view because that's where things are right now. But much of these comments will apply to the buyer too, and attracting customers. What it looks like and feels like is going to be much more important to the person attracted to this space than anything else. So as inexpensively as possible, because there's pressure coming in from the outside here, the space should be set up so that it looks ready and conducive to a kind of beauty and the natural beauty of the space at whatever stage it's at. What the space looks like on the first impression will matter to everyone who's naturally attracted, paying really close attention to detail as far as setting a stage with music and plants and lighting and things like that. Those are all really important. Even if some parts of the space aren't complete, it's still important to be able to reflect that beauty is important to you and that this space has its own beauty to it, which it does. And I really love this building. I know how beautiful it can be, and people are going to be attracted to the vision of the original architect and that it's ready to house an experience. So music or plants even, that's not going too far, even to the point where it's a bunch of little things that would seem insignificant. These things are not insignificant because there's a romantic visionary buyer. It has to translate this feeling of a visionary project in order to be successful to anyone who's attracting this energy. There are some suggestions. The first thing that I'm going to address is the key to success in this space. The most important part of this space for the success of the buyer is the secondary doors that lead into the building from the side. The most important thing for the success of this space is to have two practical, straight, deep doorways leading to corridors off of the parking lot and into the building as quickly and efficiently as possible, preferably with clear paths to many areas on the inside and straight back to the opposite wall, basically the northern wall of this space. These doors are the basis of success for this building because the bulk of the wealth is located metaphorically in the romance of the yard and the fire of the outside of these doors to be brought in. There's nothing obstructing these doors. Double doors would be better than single doors as far as the buyer is concerned. And the finished space, it would be better to have double doors. It would be better to have. I'm also picturing a fire escape where there's a door on the top and the bottom. These pathways into the building are an influx of resources. They're metaphorically bringing business into the space and energizing it, helping make it so that anything is possible. It's the single most important thing to ensure that the ongoing success of this space and the wealth of this space and property. There appear to be 3 doors into this building. There's sort of an annex building at the back. I'm not able to see exactly how these spaces are connected. These could be thoroughfare pathways, just like what I said. And there certainly is a door that leads into the main space and probably leads into a basement area as well. Anyway, it's important for these pathways to be clear and straight, that people can come through them, that they be as wide as possible. They're good for bringing goods into. That's an important thing to emphasize. So how easy these are to use, I've kind of peeked through the windows of this building. I'm not sure how they feature on the inside, but the bigger these doors are, the better. The bigger the corridors that these doors lead to, the better it is. And the more energy this building can capture, the more wealth this building can capture. So the rear part of this building is a very fast moving space with a lot of moving energy. And the elements in the back of the space are metal and water. And to some extent, every building needs a fast-moving energy in order to create wealth. There are some exceptions. And when you have a mountain energy, the stillness, you don't want that to lead to stagnation. Combination of stillness and reflection and this fast-moving energy coming in is ideal. It's a good harmony. So the rear part of this building is really important, probably more important than anything else, although the front is probably the more important part initially, just in attracting the buyer. So that's what I'm going to be talking about next, is the front of the structure. So this area is going to have a reflective energy. It wants to be timeless, and it wants to be beautiful, and it wants to have this combination of stone and wood coming together, because it's the easternmost part of the building. The very front of the building is where you would want there to be ideally a forest of trees, and you want to be getting good wood energy, and the central space is stone, and you want that to be like a timeless beauty. So you want this wood and stone to work together. It's a very beautiful combination. Stone and ceramic and glass. The more beauty is going to be enhanced, luck and windfalls. Everybody loves mountain energy, and that creates harmony. It creates favor with your neighbors. It creates gift giving. It creates luck in finding things and attracting free resources and manifesting things. This is not a part of a building that you want a lot of large metal items in. The large metal items, even decorative metal items, should be in the back and the side of the building. So there's an eternal energy, whereas metal is a very temporal energy. You want eternal space. You want this enduring, and you want it to be stately and dignified. Because of the romantic nature of this purchase, it's important that this building catch the attention of the romantic dreamers who are driving down the street and walking down the street. In the doors in the east, where you want to connote a thriving forest, which is a symbol of a thriving business. I would put plants on either side of the door, and heavy planters, maybe in concrete or stone or wood, something pretty permanent. I would put plants in the planters. I would insulate their roots for the winter so they can stay warm. I'd put maybe evergreens in the planters. I would give it nice fertile soil so that these plants survive and thrive. Because the closest tree to this sidewalk is a long distance away, visible trees in this area are few and far between. So these plants will increase the wealth energy of the building. It will augment the wood feeling of the building, and it will attract the eye of someone who's coming down the street in their car. Like right now, the building is kind of nondescript, and there are beautiful elements if you look closely. But what is really important is that you, at a glance, connote wealth. and connote something that's growing and something fertile and something active and that's visible. Putting plants would create this feeling that you're going for. It'll increase the visibility of the building as you're walking by it. I would also, at the bare minimum, paint the metal out of the front door and leave no visible raw metal on the door on the front of the building, because that can be cutting to the wood energy on this part of the building. I would suggest painting the door frame out and the little metal part of the inside of the door as well. I would paint it out in an olive color, most likely, because it sort of jives with the colors that your stylish neighbors are using. So I would use an olive color. You don't have to paint everything. I would say it's enough. If there's a priority, the priority should be to paint the door. In the front of the building, I would put a simple wooden table with a small plant that's visible from the outside. I would wash the windows on the first and second floor from the inside and from the outside, if possible, if you have time and the energy and resources to do that. The glazing is one of the most interesting and unique features of this building. I would cover up the awning with a black canvas. I would replace the light bulbs under the awning and turn the lights on, if possible. But the most important priority is to put some planters out or at least paint that raw metal. So it's not necessary to make things perfect. There are lots of little things that need to be done to set the stage and create this simple beauty and vision. Next, I'm going to talk about the laneway. This is a secondary forest area. I would make sure there's no rust showing on the metal window guards on the side of the building, so I would paint them white. I would put a table on the inside in front of the first or second window, or both, with a small plant that could be seen from the laneway. This is a very interesting place because as you're driving down the driveway, you're seeing the power center of the building, which is right in front of you, and it's in front of the doors, and there's so much energy culminating on the outside of those doors that this should create a very strong story of the outside of this property. It should be interesting and it should be beautiful. Over the course of years, this is developing. It should be obvious that there's a thriving business here based on what's happening outside of the doors. There's a lot of energy, and it also creates interest from your neighbors. What's going on here? It's like a big spotlight shining on the building. So these windows that lead down to the secondary doors say something about the space. It doesn't need to be perfect. What should be done is tidying up the outside and painting out the rust. What you want to do is lead people down this laneway, begin to think about showcasing the most important part of this property, which is a landing or a space right outside of the doors that lead in from the side. This area has so much power in it, and it determines the success of everything that happens within the building. And as a seller, whatever you can do to not obstruct the space, to make it look open, to make it look welcoming, to make it look functional, to create function, to create a depth inside, to remove all obstacles, to make it as straight and usable as possible, to make it so that the door stays open, for instance, if you want it to. So now I'm going to talk about the interior. You can get away with it looking industrial. I would tidy up the walls. The exposed brick is exciting and the ceiling is exciting, but I would tie up the electrical and tuck it away. And I have a feeling this buyer is going to want to create a bar or a restaurant or something where people can have live music and have a common shared emotional experience. So this customer may want to install washrooms for 7 or 8 people, as it would be appropriate for a bar or an establishment with a capacity of 250 to 300 people. So I would help this along if you wish. It's important to have, I think, probably at least one finished bathroom with a toilet and sink for the buyer. The most auspicious place for bathrooms is in the rear quarter of the building. I would show off the features. I can see that there is exposed brick. I would make sure everything was vacuumed. I would cover up anything that's distracting. If anything looks dirty, or distracting, I would maybe paint it out white a little bit. Because this customer may want to install an industrial kitchen, I think probably the most auspicious space for a kitchen is along the northern wall. So in this case, if you're the seller, I would say to not obstruct anything that would be needed to have a kitchen there. I'm sure that you're considering already the electrical and everything. It's obvious that at every stage there's something that you can do to help the space along, and I'm sure you're already doing all those things, and it's very exciting, the plans that you have for this building. Everything will continue to evolve in a very organic way. Decking is the next thing I want to talk about. The people who are experiencing the side of the building are going to be the people working there, but also the neighbors. Decking and landing area is extremely important. There might be something that you can do to kind of show off the space that is so important. Maybe paint out some of the doors, make the space look a little bit special, and maybe mark out where you would want to have decking or pavers or something like that. This is a area that's conducive to metal, so you could have some metal decking that associated with the fire escape. Fire escape could bring energy to the inside of the building. So those are the kinds of things that are important in this case. But this evolves organically. In any case, whatever you do here to create beauty, bit by bit, like planting gardens there to corral this energy that's just waiting outside of your door and bring it inside of the building. Because there is so much power and energy on the side of the building, the harmonious nature of your relationships with this space and your neighbors and the happiness of your neighbors. After all, this where you're gaining wealth is unthinkingly considered a common space by probably all of your neighbors around here. So it's important to access it, but it's also important to express yourself to them, honoring their privacy and creating beauty and harmony and honoring the green space and honoring their parking spaces. And it's just about being careful and considerate and expressing yourself in a simple manner and staking claim on space that's actually yours, and maybe some interlocking brick or interesting flagstone and some vegetation growing up through the flagstones or something like that. Generally, as much green space as possible should be kept in the backyard because of how it feeds the romanticism of the inside of the space, because the windows are bringing in a beautiful view, ideally. Making that space beautiful, having a Christmas tree there in the winter time, things like that. Anyway, I'm hoping for a win-win-win here for the buyer and seller and realtor and everyone involved. And I wish everyone the best of luck. And I hope that you're having a wonderful night. And I'll talk to you later.